chaos has erupted across Britain. What began as quiet murmurs of rural frustration has now exploded into a national emergency. In an almost unthinkable turn, King Charles has reportedly lost his composure behind palace walls. Known for his calm and measured demeanour, the monarch is said to have lashed out after viewing disturbing footage of Prime Minister Keir Starmer's government arresting farmers and citizens for what authorities are calling non-compliance. But this is more than political unrest. It's a full-scale revolt against a government accused of turning on its own people. The outrage is no longer limited to the countryside. From the opulent chambers of Buckingham Palace to the gritty streets of London, fury is spreading like wildfire. Britain now teeters on the brink of a crisis it hasn't faced in generations. The first signs of this storm were subtle, like whispers carried on the wind. Isolated protests in farming towns, worried social media posts from families, and quiet warnings from legal experts about governmental overreach. But within days, those whispers became roars. Across England's rural heartlands, Somerset, Lincolnshire, Devon and Northland, the very fields that once represented the country's agricultural pride have become battlegrounds of resistance. What sparked this explosive reaction? A wave of radical enforcement actions under newly introduced emergency compliance orders. These directives targeted individuals and communities labelled as resistant to national mandates. In simpler terms, anyone who questioned government policies, refused new tax schemes, or participated in unauthorised gatherings risked being detained without a trial. It all began with the farmers. Labour's latest policies have made it nearly impossible for small landowners to stay afloat. Controversial inheritance tax reforms placed unbearable valuations on family-run farms, while surprise audits and inspections descended upon agricultural areas. When local farmers denied entry to government agents demanding access to their land, they were branded non-compliant. Then came the arrests. Dozens of farmers were taken away in handcuffs, right in front of their loved ones. Their tools were confiscated. Their land flagged for state seizure. Soon, raw and unsettling videos surfaced. Gritty clips showing peaceful farmers being dragged off by riot police. Their only offence? Refusing to hand over their life's work to a faceless bureaucracy. The term non-compliance quickly evolved into something far more sinister. In Essex, a 62-year-old farmer was pulled from his barn after questioning a sudden property reassessment. In Dorset, a young couple was arrested during a town hall for asking Labour MPs how they'd manage winter heating bills. In Shropshire, a 14-year-old girl was removed from a community event by armed officers for handing out leaflets critical of government energy policies. The entire nation watched in stunned silence as the government's tone shifted, from democratic representation to authoritarian control, from leadership to domination, and with each passing day it becomes clearer. Britain is no longer simply divided, it is on the verge of breaking. The tipping point came when King Charles learned of the unfolding crisis, not through official government channels, but via leaked footage shown to him by senior palace aides. According to royal insiders, the king was presented with a compilation of disturbing scenes from the past 72 hours. Police tackling elderly landowners, tear gas deployed on peaceful tractor protests, and a disabled war veteran arrested for waving a Union Jack outside his local village hall. What followed was nothing short of an emotional outburst. Witnesses say King Charles slammed his hand on the table and exclaimed, "This is disgraceful. This is not who we are." Aides, many of whom had served the royal household for decades, claimed they had never seen him so visibly enraged. That single moment sent shockwaves through the upper echelons of government. Sources close to the palace confirmed the king made an unscheduled, urgent call to Prime Minister Keir Starmer, a call described as anything but symbolic. In a voice reportedly filled with fury and conviction, the king warned the Prime Minister, "You are tearing this nation apart. You are arresting the very people whose backs built this country. This must end." Though the monarchy is bound by constitutional limits, the symbolic force of such a rebuke was monumental. By expressing such strong opposition, King Charles crossed a line, one many believe should have been crossed long ago. But rather than de-escalate, the Starmer administration doubled down. Just hours after the royal intervention, Downing Street released a stern statement defending the arrests as necessary for preserving social cohesion. The statement further insisted that non-compliance with lawful government directives could not be tolerated during what they called a time of national transition. That phrase alone, national transition, immediately sparked confusion and dread across the country. What was Britain transitioning into? And under whose authority were citizens being jailed? As outrage intensified in the countryside, it rapidly spilled into urban centres. London, Liverpool, Sheffield, Birmingham, thousands of people from all walks of life took to the streets. Farmers' protests fused with marches for civil liberties. Students, pensioners, workers, and clergy locked arms in a rapidly growing movement now known as the Freedom Front. Protest banners stretched from Westminster to Tower Bridge, emblazoned with powerful slogans like "We are not serfs," "Stop the arrests," and "Britain belongs to the people." In London alone, more than 120,000 demonstrators flooded the streets in just 48 hours. Despite the overwhelmingly peaceful nature of these protests, the state's response grew increasingly heavy-handed. Riot police were deployed preemptively, drones patrolled the skies, and mobile surveillance towers scanned the crowds. At the same time, unsettling new reports began to surface from Gloucestershire. A small village council building was raided after residents were caught hosting a casual meeting to discuss how best to respond to compliance orders. Everyone present, including an 83-year-old retired nurse, was arrested. In Lanarkshire, a man was detained after tweeting, "Britain feels like a prison lately." Government surveillance algorithms flagged his post as potential digital provocation. What once sounded like wild conspiracy theories now appear all too real. These accounts, no longer whispers or social media rumours, have been confirmed and documented by multiple independent watchdogs and international news agencies. The truth is out and the world is watching. The media's response to the unfolding crisis has been fractured and increasingly strained. Major news outlets have largely refrained from reporting the full extent of the arrests, citing responsible journalism and concerns over national security. Yet cracks are beginning to show. A handful of brave journalists have broken ranks, releasing anonymous testimonies revealing they were warned not to inflame public sentiment. One leaked email from a senior editor at a leading British publication stated bluntly, "We've been advised to tread carefully. The government is watching our tone." These revelations have only intensified public anger, deepening the belief that free speech in Britain is no longer safe but under siege. Meanwhile, the Reform UK party has surged in both public support and visibility. Nigel Farage, long dismissed by the political elite as too controversial, is now being embraced as a voice of truth. His speeches are drawing massive crowds, with his fiery denunciations of the Starmer regime echoing from quiet village greens to viral digital platforms. "We are witnessing the rise of a police state," he declared at a rally in Leeds, "and it is our duty to stop it before it's too late." His words have struck a chord across the nation, giving shape and momentum to a growing rebellion. Many now believe Britain is heading for a dramatic showdown between government power and people power. As this section comes to a close, the country is simmering at a boiling point. The palace is visibly shaken, the Prime Minister remains defiantly unmoved, and the people, once silent, scattered and disillusioned, are rising in collective fury. The arrest of farmers and ordinary voters under the vague charge of non-compliance has awakened something deep in the British psyche. The question looming over the nation is no longer just whether Starmer can maintain his grip on power, but whether the system itself can endure the pressure. Protesters continue to flood the streets. The monarchy's silence, once a symbol of impartiality, now feels deafening. In the days since King Charles's emotional outburst, the situation has only worsened. Over 700 arrests have now been confirmed under the government's Emergency Public Order Compliance Directive, a policy that was quietly passed through Parliament just weeks ago, with little debate and almost no media coverage. The calm has shattered, and Britain finds itself standing on the edge of a political reckoning. The directive in question grants sweeping new powers to law enforcement, powers that allow officers to detain anyone suspected of organising disruptive gatherings, challenging official narratives, or failing to comply with state outreach programmes. These terms are so vague and broadly defined that virtually anyone could fall under their scope. A concerned social media post, an elderly person declining a doorstep survey, even children discussing protests in school, all could now be grounds for detainment. As a result, detention centres are rapidly filling to capacity. In a deeply alarming move, the government has begun converting abandoned military barracks and old industrial warehouses into temporary holding facilities for those deemed non-compliant. Reports out of Kent describe detainees living in freezing conditions, denied access to legal counsel and even basic medical care. One insider, a former civil servant turned whistleblower, called the situation a human rights catastrophe in the making. He revealed that many of those arrested are being held indefinitely, with no trial dates, no public records, and no way to contact their families. When asked why the mainstream press has remained silent, his answer was chilling: "They're terrified. The state has weaponized fear." Within the palace, King Charles remains out of the public eye, but those close to him describe him as deeply troubled. Sources claim the monarch has convened emergency consultations with constitutional experts, spiritual advisors, and retired members of the Privy Council. The question weighing heavily on him is no longer whether this crisis will deepen, but whether he, as a constitutional monarch, has the moral authority to act. Traditionally, the king's role is symbolic and politically neutral. But these are not traditional times. There is now widespread speculation that Charles is preparing to deliver an unprecedented public address, a move not seen in nearly a century. If he does speak, it will signal a seismic moment, the monarchy directly confronting the government, warning that the Starmer administration is not only overstepping its bounds, but threatening the soul of the nation itself. Yet Starmer's government shows no signs of backing down. Instead of diffusing tensions, it has expanded its reach. New preemptive security zones have been declared in major cities, granting police the authority to cordon off entire neighbourhoods, restrict movement, and impose curfews in the name of preserving public order. In Manchester, multiple blocks were sealed off after residents attempted to organise a peaceful community rally. In Leeds, 2 local councillors were arrested for encouraging constituents to question the legality of compliance directives. The government's strategy is clear: silence dissent before it spreads. But the dissent is spreading faster than they can contain it. Now, even the nation's educators are beginning to resist. Teachers across the country are speaking out against new Department for Education guidelines that demand schools monitor students for signs of political unrest. One head teacher in Birmingham, who asked to remain anonymous, leaked a memo instructing schools to hold emergency assemblies, warning pupils not to join protests, or even repeat politically sensitive phrases at home. The reach of control is now extending into family conversations, schoolyards, and social circles. And still, the resistance grows. The head teacher who refused to comply with the government's new surveillance directive was suspended within 24 hours. But her silence wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something larger. Her story went viral, sparking a wave of solidarity among educators across the country. Teachers, long seen as the quiet caretakers of the nation's conscience, are now joining the growing resistance. And they're not alone. Religious leaders from across the spectrum, Anglican bishops, Catholic priests, Muslim imams, have begun speaking out with a unified voice. In an online sermon that quickly gained traction, one London bishop thundered, "When the government criminalises compassion, when it punishes peaceful resistance, it ceases to serve the people. It becomes something else entirely." His words struck a nerve, reverberating across social media and igniting digital campaigns that have reached millions. In response, the government has tightened its grip on the internet. Independent news outlets have seen their websites restricted or flagged under vague compliance content policies. Influencers and content creators who dare to speak out risk being shadow banned or locked out of their accounts entirely. Behind the scenes, tech platforms are reportedly facing heavy pressure to follow unpublished government directives on content moderation. Despite these efforts, the movement continues to swell. Reform UK, riding a wave of public anger, has experienced a meteoric rise. Local chapters have tripled in size in just a few weeks. Pop-up legal clinics, fueled by donations from ordinary citizens, are offering free legal aid to those arrested under the emergency directive. Across major cities, digital billboards flash urgent messages. "Speak now or lose everything. We are Britain. Stop the arrests." Underground newspapers, once relics of history, are now back in print, distributed by hand on train platforms, church steps, and supermarket entrances. This resistance isn't being led by politicians. It's being built, block by block, by ordinary people, teachers, parents, shopkeepers, farmers. Yet the emotional weight of the moment is unbearable. Every day brings new horrors, new viral footage, new heartbreak. In one video, a mother screams in agony as her teenage son is dragged away from a peaceful protest. In another, a retired RAF officer is arrested simply for refusing to remove a protest badge from his coat while entering a post office. These scenes, once unthinkable, are becoming disturbingly normal. And it's that normalisation of fear, of control, of silence that terrifies those still watching. Inside Whitehall, the government itself appears to be cracking. Anonymous reports from civil servants speak of internal chaos and moral panic. Some senior officials are reportedly horrified by the hardline shift, but are too afraid to voice their concerns. A confidential document, recently leaked to the press, revealed that internal polling shows public confidence in the Labour government has collapsed to its lowest level in decades. One haunting line in the memo, highlighted in red, read simply, "The people." And where is the opposition? The Conservative Party, battered and discredited after years of scandal and infighting, remains largely absent from the national conversation. Some believe they fear being painted as co-conspirators in this unfolding crisis. But voices are beginning to rise. Independent MPs, regional leaders, even celebrities, speaking not in polished sound bites, but in raw moral truth. One independent MP stood in Parliament last week and declared, "This is not leadership, it's repression. And every day we remain silent, we betray the people we swore to represent." The battle lines are no longer just drawn in the halls of Westminster. They're appearing in every home, every village, every classroom. This is no longer just a political conflict. It has become a rupture in the very fabric of society. The people are no longer just protesting. They are watching, waiting, and questioning. Will the king break his silence? Will Starmer relent? Or will the nation sink deeper into the shadows of authoritarian rule? As Britain enters open confrontation between its citizens and its leaders, the thin veneer of democracy has all but disintegrated. The term non-compliance, once a dry bureaucratic phrase, now defines an entire era of repression. It has become the all-purpose excuse to silence dissent, dismantle civil action, and strip ordinary citizens of their basic rights. Across the United Kingdom, people are being detained, interrogated, and in some cases, vanished into legal limbo without charge, trial, or explanation. Civil liberties groups, already stretched to their limits, have issued dire warnings. Habeas corpus, the ancient legal safeguard ensuring the right to a fair trial, is being shredded in plain sight, while the nation watches in stunned disbelief. What began as isolated arrests in rural areas has now metastasized into a full-blown campaign against dissent itself. Libraries have been shut down for hosting public forums discussing compliance orders. Volunteer groups offering food to struggling farming families have been branded subversive aid networks. In Newcastle, an elderly man was arrested at a bus stop for holding a handwritten sign that read, "We deserve answers." When asked by police why he was demonstrating, he quietly responded, "I just want to know why we're being treated like criminals." He was taken away as onlookers stood frozen, too frightened to intervene. Inside Parliament, the mood has turned cold and tense, laced with paranoia. Labour MPs, once outspoken and passionate, now whisper cautiously, even among themselves. Leaks from parliamentary aides paint a bleak picture. Meetings secretly recorded, personal devices monitored, and anyone questioning the party line quickly marginalised. One whistleblower revealed that a senior MP was threatened with deselection, simply for suggesting the emergency orders be re-examined. "It's no longer a political party," the whistleblower said grimly. "It's an enforcement machine. They're eating their own to maintain the illusion of unity." Meanwhile, Reform UK's rise has become impossible to ignore. No longer dismissed as fringe or reactionary, the party has become the lightning rod for a nation's fury. Town after town, village after village, their events are overflowing. Public halls can't contain the numbers. Outdoor rallies are drawing tens of thousands. Nigel Farage, once branded too divisive for mainstream politics, now leads a coalition of farmers, students, business owners, pensioners, and even disillusioned former Labour voters. His message is stark yet deeply resonant. Britain belongs to its people, not to those who would govern through fear.